Knicks fans, Knicks and Bruises back with another episode 5. I got my guest here, EverGreen,
Peace,
frequent
peace,
member
peace.
of the MBK podcast. So, what's going on, EverGreen?
I'm good, man. How you? How's everything going?
I'm good. I'm a little, down because we're on this little losing streak, but overall, I'm pretty happy with where the team is. So I'm not too down.
Listen, I know this is a losing streak, but you gotta. This. Listen, we already triple better than what we were under the Fizdale regime. So these little losing streaks like this, they're expected with a new young team. We got a whole bunch of new players on it. So don't. There's a little bit of familiarity, but don't. You know what I mean? Don't go too crazy on us. We're good where we at. We can lose the tough games. It's the games that we're not supposed to lose that you should have a problem with. You know what I'm saying?
Agree. I mean, but we had a couple of those too. But that's neither here nor there. We could talk about that a little more in a little bit. I appreciate you joining Knicks and Bruises podcast.
Absolutely.
Giving some insight on your personal anguish, your personal pain, your personal nicks and bruises that you suffered over the years as a Knicks fan. And again, the floor is yours because this is always about the guests.
All right. So my first Nick would have to be the signing of, well, not the signing, but the losing of my favorite player of all time. And anybody that's been watching this, watching the MBK family, everyone knows my favorite player, and still my favorite player to this day, is Steve Francis. And when we got Steve Francis off of his injury, as a young kid, I'm not really taking into consideration injuries at all. You know what I mean? I'm just like, the dude that was over in Orlando that moved to Houston is killing right now. And he was my guy, right? And now the Knicks got him. I was too young to know anything about player age or anything about injuries or anything about contracts. So all I know is we got this guy, Stephon Marbury. I'm 33 years old. You know what I mean? So we got this guy, Stephon Marbury, right? And we got Steve Francis. They were two of the hottest point guards in the league at that time. And I'm like, oh, we got both of them. So I want to say that was the 05-06 season that we ended up, it was all those reclamation projects that we had. It was, Eddie Curry, Steve Francis, who else? I think Nate Robinson was on that team. Right, and it was a young Nate.
Familiar.
Who was it? Quentin? Yep, Quentin Richardson was on that team. Like it was a whole bunch of reclamation projects. Oh, who else? Anthony Hardaway was on that team. I'm like, oh yeah, we're going somewhere. All for it to like just explode, and all of those players were gone the next season. Right, so that would be my first Nick. Very painful because Steve Francis is my guy.
What was it? Obviously it wasn't the fact that we got Steve Francis that made it a Nick for you. It was his injury or his
because his
production.
His production was really low. That season. Let me see. That season he had a couple decent games, like almost not for nothing, but his output was that of what DSJ output his first season with us. And after his injury, he averaged what with us? He averaged that first year 10.8, the second year, 11.3. Right? But the seasons before that with Toronto, which that was a short stint, he averaged 14, but the season before that with Orlando, when it was 21 points a game. So I'm thinking, again, as a young basketball fan, I'm not looking at injuries or anything like that. I'm not looking into why he got traded. I'm not looking into what happened the following year. All I care about is, yo, we got Steve Francis, and he's on my favorite team, because I had yet to have a favorite player on the Knicks. You know what I mean? Like, no, never get me wrong. Like, I watched my Spree Wells, I watched my Allen Houston, but my guy that I gravitated to, who, like, when I was playing ball, who I wanted to who I wanted to replicate my basketball game, was out of two players, right? Steve Francis was the first one. The second one that I tried to emulate my game after, who we also ended up getting eventually down the line, was Tracy McGrady. So it's like my two favorite players that at one point in time got traded for each other. Now, 3 years later, I get Tracy McGrady, and my hopes are through the roof. Like, oh my God, we got Tracy McGrady. He's this perennial all-star. Yeah, he's got this really nagging back injury. At this point, I'm really like paying attention to basketball, and this is when I really got heavy into trying to understand, things contractually, injuries, roster. Like, I'm really, really paying attention to it. And we got Steve Francis, and then we ended up letting him go, and he ends up going to San Antonio and retiring. And excuse me, Tracy McGrady. Sorry, not Steve Francis. Tracy McGrady. He ends up, going to San Antonio and then retiring. And it was just like, at that point in time, I felt like I had absolutely nothing to watch because during those years we were so bad. So I didn't start watching Knicks basketball games again. So now this is the real Knick, so to speak, was after the Tracy McGrady era for me. Like, I was essentially done with the Knicks. Like, I'm a young dude that's, I'm trying to maneuver on in the world, and I had just ended up joining the military in 2009, so I really didn't have time to talk about basketball, to be a fan. And then, we ended up getting Amare after that.
Well, so now before you continue, let me just say, because you actually answered two questions that I had for you, which was one, well, were you a Knicks fan and it happened that your favorite player went to the Knicks, or did you follow your favorite player? But you answered that. But it's funny because I said on one of my episodes, similar to you, all of my favorite point guards have at one point become Knicks, and they were my favorite. And they were my favorite, my favorite guys outside of the Knicks, and they happen to become Knicks. And it's McGrady, it's Hardaway, and it's Stephon Marbury.
Oh, you mean all your favorite guards? All your favorite guards? Yeah. Well, point guard was Anthony Hardaway was a point guard, kind of, sort of. But yeah, that's crazy.
Those were my guys. So the fact that we got them at one point, that's amazing. So my quick question for you is, how did you feel getting Francis here? And I'll be honest with you, I was a fan of Steve Francis, but I wasn't a fan of that acquisition. I didn't think it was a good fit, him and Marbury together, just because of I felt like they were two smaller guards in the league. But that's neither here nor there. How'd you feel when we got Steve Francis?
I was ecstatic. Yo, it was like you got to realize, like, as a kid, my grandfather like kind of brainwashed me to be a Knicks fan. Like, I'm from the Bronx, I would go to my grandfather's house in Pelham, and he had like the 90s games recorded. And we would come over there. I feel like he knew we were coming over there. Me and my cousins were coming over there, and he'd like pop the tape in. You know what I mean? Like, because who's really sitting down watching 90s Knicks games all day? But like every time we would go over there, we were watching 90s games. You know what I mean? So like I was brought into that as a kid, but that was my introduction to watching basketball. Like every kid in New York City plays basketball all day, but to like actually watching basketball and attempting to digest the game, it was with my grandfather. So now that I've watched the game and I've understand and I've grown a liking to certain players and gaining popularity, the first guy that was popular for me was Steve Francis. Like he was my guy. Like I love everything he did when he was with Houston. So when we got him after the Orlando season, I was like a kid in a candy store. It was the greatest day of my life. Oh my God, we got Steve Francis. And then he only lasts for 2 seasons, and then the injuries, and then we let him go. And it's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So the same thing with Tracy McGrady. Like Tracy McGrady is my favorite shooting guard, small forward of all time, regardless of injuries. Like all the stuff that he did for the Orlando team after getting traded from Toronto. I don't know if he was traded or was he traded from Toronto or signed, or did he sign?
No,
he was traded.
Toronto.
He left Toronto. Okay, so all the stuff that him and Vince Carter was doing together to come to Orlando and him to blossom by himself. And I'm just like, oh man, if this dude just gets a center and then he gets traded and swapped out, and then a couple years later they draft Dwight Howard, I'm like, oh yeah, we got Tracy McGrady now. Like that slump that I had of the Steve Francis experiment is not working. This Tracy McGrady experiment is it.
And he had some good games for us too.
Good, yeah, he had a few good ones, but it was short lived due to the injury. We ended up getting rid of him, and he goes to San Antonio, and then he calls it quits in San Antonio. So my last Nick and Bruise goes to another one of my favorite players that we ended up getting by the name of Baron Davis.
And I was gonna say that I forgot to add him.
So when we got Baron Davis, I said, oh man, like we're really trying to make a really good playoff push. And I think he like blew out his knee that season with us, right? And so at this point in time, like I'm in the Marine Corps, so when you're in the military, like you're amongst people from all over the country, right? So the only thing that you guys initially can hang your hat on that you have that's yours is the fact that you have a particular sports team. You know what I mean? So that was one thing that I held my pride on. And this is when I really, really got heavy into New York Knicks basketball, was about 2010, 2011, because I'm all the way down in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, like in my own element. And the only thing I have to hang my hat on is the fact that I'm from New York. The Giants, just won the Super Bowl, and the Knicks are quote unquote coming up, and we got Baron Davis. Like we got like BD is the guy, right? He's the guy, but he's 3 injuries past his prime. But I'm like, it's still Baron Davis. Like you can't count that guy out. Sure enough, knee blowout, you count him out, and then. But then there was a bright future with the Amari and the Carmelo Anthony and the Knicks tape season. So I had like a 2 or 3 year stretch of really being able to talk my trash to all of my friends. Yo, the Knicks. And then this is where my hatred for Brooklyn for the Nets comes into play. Because, was it 2012, 2013 season is when the Nets get there. And all of my friends that I galvanized towards while watching basketball was all from Brooklyn. And they all got up and went across the bridge over to Brooklyn now. I mean, obviously, we still in North Carolina. But they're like, oh, Brooklyn got a team. Jay-Z just brought us a team. And I'm the only guy that's, in the chow halls on base screaming for the Knicks. And everybody else is like, yeah, we're Brooklyn fans now. So I would say those 4 things are my Knicks. Those 4 things are my Knicks.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So it's little small cuts here and there. Now that I've grown and I understand like the business of basketball, the economics of basketball, like. Now I look at it and it's like, well, it was kind of minuscule. You know what I mean? Isaiah Thomas was just trying to make something happen. He's a hell of a scout. He was just trying to make something happen, and I understand now. But then they were like, those were detrimental. I've since healed from them, and you can still see the scars in my conversation. But
100%. And it's tough because like these are our favorite players, and it just like on our favorite team, and then they just aren't the shells of themselves of the players we fell in love with.
Right. Now, so my bruises comes. I want to put them. I got to put them all together in one, because if anything, it's more. It's not a bruise. It's more like a gouge. It's more like a sucking chest wound of just like, you know what I mean? Like when you watching those movies and you see like the samurai, you know what I mean, chop his enemy down and got the big gash and just blood's all over the way. Like, so the 2016 season, all right, which was the Phil Jackson era. I think, was it 2016 season this season? No.
It was
we had
13, 14. He came
the 14.
He came at the end of 13, 14.
Right. Okay. So the end of 13, 14, I was, I'm still in the Marine Corps at this time. And I was on like a ship operation. And when Phil Jackson came in towards the end of that season, I knew Mike Woodson was going to be gone. Right. And he was like the best thing that happened to us since the Baron Davis injury and him dropping off, in my opinion. Right. So now Phil Jackson comes, and I hated it. And everybody else that I knew that was on this ship operation that I was on, these guys were all, Knicks fans. There was a bunch of Knicks fans too. They're like, oh my God, we got Phil Jackson. Like, we're about to take over the world. You know what I mean? Like, we got the greatest coach. They're like, oh, we're going to get Kobe. We're going to trade for Kobe. It was like a whole bunch of like unnecessary things that was happening. And I was just like, I was the only guy that saw the writing on the wall that this was about to be horrible. Right. So we get Phil Jackson, and the very next thing he does is he fires Mike Woodson. Bye-bye, Mike Woodson. And so while on ship, I started doing some research of available people that were coaches. And no one was available that we were looking at. But I remember seeing a news article, I can't remember where it was from, online, that said that the Knicks, if you remember, there was two coaches that were in contention for the job. The first one was Steve Kerr, and the second one was Derek Fisher, right? And as soon as they announced that Steve Kerr was the guy, because he hadn't been, he didn't beat out anybody to become coach of Golden State yet. He was just a guy that was like putting in job applications essentially to be a coach. As soon as Phil Jackson went after him, I automatically knew that Carmelo Anthony is soon to be gone. Simply because, well, not. Let me rephrase that. When Steve Kerr got the job, or when Steve Kerr got offered the job, and he turned it down, and then Derek Fisher got offered the job, that's when I knew Carmelo Anthony was going to be out the door. Because if you remember, it was automatic that I knew that the triangle was going to be a thing that was going to happen, right? And what do Steve Kerr and Derek Fisher both have in common? They're both point guards. They're both point guards under Phil Jackson that won championships, and they both know the triangle in and out. And I'm like, oh man, this triangle is about to be something that is going to happen here in New York City by force, and we don't have the slashing forward that could be the Scottie Pippen of the team, and we don't have the scoring two guard that can be the two guard of the team, and we don't have the big man in the post only shot blocking player. And the only thing that we had on that team was the distributing point guard. That's the only thing we had. So I said, yo, this triangle is not going to work. And everyone's screaming at me like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So we get Phil Jackson, Steve Kerr, he doesn't get the job. Derek Fisher gets the job. And I knew that was going to be a problem because remember, Derek Fisher was still playing with OKC. So he essentially I don't know if he opted out of his contract or I'm pretty sure he opted out of his contract to take the job. And that let me know that Derek Fisher's hands were tied because he still had some, I can say Derek Fisher probably had maybe 2 years left of real basketball in him. And the fact that he was willing to give that up to knowing that he was going to be told what to do from the nosebleeds let me know that there was going to be some real roster changes on that team. And sure enough, you ended up getting Derrick Rose on his last leg, Joakim Noah on his last leg, all of these acquisitions that we made, we got rid of Tim Hardaway Jr. only to get him back again later on for a crazy contract. It was just the worst, man. It was just the worst. So I have to put my Bruises in that whole
Phil Jackson era.
That whole Phil Jackson era was just chop off all my limbs and I got nothing left in basketball.
I think I was in agreement with you getting Phil Jackson only because I said, yeah, I don't mind having him, but he has to coach. I didn't care if he had both positions, but I felt like if he wanted to run the triangle or if he wanted the triangle ran, he needed to run it. He was the guru of it. He was the guy that brought the championships from it. And I felt like even though these guards, Kerr and Fisher, played under it, and they were point guards, they didn't run it themselves.
Right.
And I didn't think it was fair to force a guy to run your offense. You know what I mean?
Right.
Let and then be creative and do what he wants to do.
And what made those bruises worse for me was the fact that years later, we're looking at a year ago, 2 years ago, before Carmelo Anthony returned, and he was doing all those campaigns and he was on all those different shows. I want to say when he was doing his show with CP3 sipping wine, and he was talking about the Knicks era, and he was like, I was certainly willing to do the triangle. Like we had some aspects in the game that was triangle related, but I wanted Phil Jackson to be the guy to explain it. And then that was just an even bigger blow. Like it just brought up so many negative memories that I had, man. I was so pissed off. Like, man, if just like you said, if Phil Jackson was the guy to come downstairs and say, nope, this is what we're doing wrong. This is what you need to do right. These are the positions that you need to be in. Maybe it would have been a different story. But again, I saw the writing on the wall, bro. The moment we got him, I'm like, yo, I don't see how you guys think this is a good idea. Phil Jackson already said that he was done coaching, and we essentially just gave him, well, not we, but Dolan gave him a bunch of money to come. He just took a check, a really big check, and got out the game.
And if you remember, that boycott was scheduled 2 days prior to us signing Phil Jackson. It was supposed to be a big boycott outside MSG, basically calling for Dolan to sell the team.
Yeah.
And 2 days, maybe even a day before is when they announced Phil Jackson signing.
So, and everybody shut up.
They calmed the crowd. They calmed the crowd.
But again, I saw. I mean, I wasn't in New York City at the time, so I heard of the boycott, but at that point in time, all that I was doing ship operations, so I wasn't really in tune. I didn't find out about that until later, and then I went back and I pointed to all of my dudes the writing's on the wall. Everybody was all pissed off about it, and now all of a sudden everybody's happy. That was just a thing to make us happy to keep keep going. all right, y'all want to believe that this is going to be great if y'all want to, but it's not. And then nobody believed me. And sure enough, 2 years later, you know what I mean? We're in the stinker, and we stayed in the stinker.
And I didn't even have a problem with the triangle because or I don't think it would have been a problem. Melo wanted to play for Tibbs. Tibbs ran the triangle as well. At least at that time. So I thought it could work. I did think it could work, but I felt like without Phil being the guy orchestrating it and teaching it, it's not going to be taught the same as you want it done. You know what I mean?
Right. But I mean, you got to look at that. You got to look at that roster. Even though, like, you've never seen a real triangle ran with forwards. You know what I mean? Like with only forwards. Like the only point guard that was on that initial team. Like, look, these are the point guards we had. We had Shane Larkin. Where's that guy at? We had Pablo Prigioni. Those are the only. That was the first year. Those are the only 2 point guards that we had, right? Pablo could have been successful with the way he was going to be able to orchestrate and distribute the ball. He was a little bit older, basketball IQ a little bit higher, but Shane Larkin was just too small to be able to successfully do it. Then the guards we also had Langston Galloway too. I think that was his rookie season, wasn't it? Yep, that was Langston Galloway's rookie season. So you can't expect Langston Galloway to have a real substantial role in a championship ran system. You know what I mean? Like, this is something that's very technical that needs to be learned over time. You know, it took a while. It took 2 seasons for Phil Jackson to really get into the wits of how the triangle was supposed to be ran, even when in a Jordan era, right? Mm-hmm. Even in the Lakers run, it took them a whole season to really get it down pat, and then they ended up winning the championship the following year. So I feel like the center, Samuel Dalembert, like, that's the guy that you're gonna have that's supposed to be like the Shaq of that team. No,
don't say Shaq. Reference the Bulls team. The what's his name? Bill Willington or
who I don't remember that day. I don't remember that dude.
Or, like, I'm just saying, you can't really say he was supposed to play the Shaq role because there's not. Shaq is a once in a generation.
Fair enough.
So let's if anything, let's compare him to the Bulls centers.
Okay, I can do that.
Formidable.
Yeah, I can deal with that. I can definitely deal with that. But even if that you're not doing anything with Samuel. How long did Samuel Dalembert last in the league after that?
No, I agree with you. I was just saying you can't. It's not unfair to say he's supposed to be Shaq.
And then Jason Smith. Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, I think he was definitely more of a Bulls big man type guy from that Phil Jackson era. A guy who could shoot the ball a little bit. He probably wasn't the defender
no, he averaged. So I'm looking at him right now on that Knicks season. He averaged 21 minutes a game, 43% from the field. Let's see. He averaged a total of 8 points a game, 1.5 free throws, 3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 0.5 and he 1.3 turnovers, and 2.5 personal fouls.
He could stretch the floor though. That's all I was saying. Right? He was a shooting big, right?
Yeah, he averaged 35% from the field, but that was on. I mean, he averaged 35% from 3, but he wasn't really a shooting big because it was 0.5%, 0.5 shots a game. So he really wasn't shooting. He was able to shoot, but he wasn't in that position to. So you could say he was traditionally the guy that was supposed to play that role, but if you compare his numbers to any of the centers on those Bulls team, it was just like those guys were grabbing boards. Those guys were grabbing boards. So my whole point is that regardless of what Phil says, and even regardless of what Melo says, this team was not formidable to play the triangle. I don't care what nobody says. Even if Melo said that he was good,
it needed Phil to do it. I agree with Melo in that aspect. And you talking about the best guy to run it, and you're here. Step down here, even if you not. He didn't want to step on what's the name's toes, Right. Like, come down here and show us.
Yeah, I respect that.
But, I respect that. And I'm not defending him. I'm saying he needed to come down and show us.
I respect that he didn't want to step on his toes, but I don't like the fact that he pretty much forced the guy to retire to come and play. Like he forced, he forced him to come coach essentially. The way I can imagine that conversation that he had with Derek Fisher, and it's like, yo, bro, like you ain't doing nothing over there with OKC. That team is done. You might as well retire and hang it up. I'm trying to offer you a new career. And Derek Fisher's like, oh man, I can see this working. And he takes the job. But now you take the job and you expect to be under the tutelage of Phil Jackson to learn everything you need to know about managing people and coaching, and the dude's falling asleep upstairs in the nosebleed section. Right. And during open runs and practices, the dude's up there fingering his nose, passed out in the chair. Right. So again, I saw the writings on the wall. That whole Phil Jackson thing was the worst thing that ever happened. Period.
I agree. I can argue that he's the best. The worst front office guy we said. I could argue he was worse than Isaiah. I can argue he was worse than Donnie. The only guy that may be worse than him is Scott Layton. And yeah, he might be the only guy that's worse than Phil.
And not for nothing, like Scott Layton era don't mean nothing to me. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't in tune with basketball. I wasn't tracking any of that stuff. That stuff is way before my time. You know what I mean? I don't know nothing about that.
Lucky you.
But listen, when I go back and I've learned the history, I'm like, wow, like what's going on here? Like, so nothing made sense then.
He started the trend of paying players 4 or 5 years after they're no longer on our team or even in the league.
Right. Well, luckily those eras are over. I got an honorable mention when it comes to this. 2 honorable mentions.
So Phil Jackson era, that's your number one?
Yeah. I put that whole thing. That whole thing is like it's more than a bruise for me. It's like an eye gouge. It's a amputate my body parts. Like it's one of those. Bruises would be the amount of ridicule that I got for Carmelo Anthony getting blocked by Roy Hibbert. Like, I got teased so much for being a Knicks fan.
That's 3 on my list.
That's number 3 on your list? Okay. Mm-hmm. I would also say Amari Stoudemire punching the fire extinguisher and splitting his hand open. And those 2. Though I can't think of anything else right now. I would say those 2. Those 2. The block was crazy to me because it was just like you could have. I understand it's Carmelo Anthony. He's trying to bang on somebody, but of all people to get blocked by, like literally Roy Hibbert did absolutely nothing from that game on. That was like the last thing Roy Hibbert ever did that was worth. I think didn't he get traded to like Miami after that? right?
I don't know. All I know is he looked like Jermaine O'Neal on that play, but but that was the only time he ever looked like Jermaine O'Neal ever. And I was just like,
no. So after that season, he went to Toronto.
mm.
So he went to the Lakers first. With the Lakers, he averaged 5 points, 3 fouls, 1 turnover, 1 block, 1 assist, 4 rebounds total. The next season, he averaged 4 points. The next season, he averaged 5 points. And then before he finally got out with Denver, he averaged 0.7 points and wasn't even getting minutes after that. So the last substantial thing he did was that 2015 season.
That block.
That block. Nothing else came after that. So I would have been able to live with it and say, man, like Roy Hibbert came into his own. He was averaging 10 points with Jeff Teague and Paul George, and he was doing a damn thing with that team. But that guy that cost us from going to the finals, that guy was blocked. That guy blocked Carmelo Anthony's shot. Carmelo Anthony's dunk. Not a shot, his dunk. So that there. And then I feel like that Amar Stoudemire series, like we were there, bro. We were there. I feel like the next game was at home. We were there. Like, just give me another stab at it and we're good. And I think didn't Chauncey Billups get injured just before that too?
I'm not sure if Billups was injured. I don't think so. But speaking of Billups, and I believe this goes back to your Phil Jackson era. Was he the one who amnestied Billups? Because I tell you what, I was not a fan of that move. With 1 year left on his contract, you amnesty a guy, which was a one-time amnesty clause that you should have saved for something of more significant value. Now, granted, it got us the space for Tyson Chandler, but I felt like there was other ways to get Tyson Chandler, if that's what we needed to do. Or
no, we didn't do that. That was the Baron Davis year that I'm talking about. Chauncey Billups was the 2010-11 season. Wait, am I bugging out? Yeah, Chauncey Billups was the 2010-11 season. He ended up leaving with Detroit. It was Baron Davis that blew out his knee in
20. No. I'm saying who amnestied Billups, because we amnestied Billups for the cap space to get Tyson Chandler.
Yeah, that was that. Yeah.
But who was in charge then? It wasn't Phil Jackson?
No. That was
Donnie Walsh?
That was the 2011 season. So yeah.
Yeah, I was not a fan of that move right there.
Yeah, but yeah. That's rough, man. Just those injuries from those point guards that we had, and oh man, you bringing up bad memories right now. I'm trying to like look towards the future.
Hey, the point of this channel is because one, we've gone through a lot as Knicks fans, right? So I want to let all of us take our turn, come on here, release our frustrations,
right,
and let it go and let it be in the past, and then we can focus on this current regime, which I love, this current roster, which I'm a fan of, and the direction of the team, which I think is probably the best. I mean, I could argue that this might be the best direction the team has been in overall since I've been a Knicks fan. You know, some of those teams in the 90s were already made, and they were great teams, and I love that era. But I never got to see us build through the draft. I never seen us bring in a free agent other than Carmelo Anthony. I've never seen us win a trade, really. You know, so I think now is the time that all these good things are going to start happening. So with that being said, I hate this podcast to be a negative one. So let's talk about the current roster and the direction and the positive vibes and some good things. I like to end off on a good note. So what are your thoughts of the current regime, the current roster, the direction, and what do you think we need to to let's start with baby steps. Let's say get in the playoffs.
The beginning of the season, I thought that there was no shot of us getting into the playoffs. But again, I was always the guy that advocated that if we got 18 wins, we were better. Right? I'm the guy that's, you got to walk before you can crawl, right? So when COVID hit and they, shut the season down and it came up and told us that, we're only going to do 72 games next season, the 18 games seemed like a hell of a lot better odds, right? Because it's 86 compared to 72. You know what I mean? That's 14 more games. So it's like if we eat, not 14, yeah.
It's normally 82 games. So
it's 82 games or 86 games?
82.
82. Okay, so
regardless,
that's 10 more games. So getting 18 would have been like a win for me. I would have looked at, you know what I mean? That's a good win. So when we went on that hot streak in the beginning of the season, my eyes, like, I didn't want to believe it. You know what I mean? I'm talking to my father, who's a Bulls fan and in a more of a Kevin Garnett fan, but he's a big Bulls fan, and he's like, "Yo, you guys look like y'all might be something this season." And initially when we got the Tom Thibodeau signing, I wasn't frustrated. It was just anything is better than Derek Fisher and David Fizdale. And, I actually liked what Mike Miller was doing, but anything was better than those guys. So Tom Thibodeau coming, and then I ended up, doing a lot of research on Tom Thibodeau, which led me to write the article that I wrote earlier on in the season for MBK. And I was like, wow, this actually seems like it could be something special. I'm a stickler for the story, right? I don't just watch basketball for the behind the back passes and the through the leg dunks and the oops. And I watch basketball because I love to follow the story of the players that we currently have and how they came up and where they came from, and figuring out if these players have pride for playing for the Knicks. And when I saw that this was Tom Thibodeau's dream job, it made me feel a lot better about not wanting what's his name from Brooklyn, Atkinson, right? So I wanted Atkinson. I think Sim wanted Atkinson. At that point, really, I just wanted anybody. A lot of my family members were talking about, we got to get Mark Jackson in here, and I wasn't even opposed to that either. But when we got Tom Thibodeau, I was just like, whatever, we'll see. Then I do the history on the guy, and I'm like, oh wow, yeah, this is something serious. I mean, I knew what he had out of Chicago, and the finals run and getting eliminated by LeBron and Derek Fisher's rookie of the year run, and then what he did with Minnesota that first year. So like I knew about that, but I really was never paying attention to what was happening with the Boston series and him being a defensive coach, and then him being off the bench for him being the assistant coach for Van Gundy. Like I didn't really pay attention to that stuff because, again, this is in my early days. I'm watching and I'm paying attention to Steve Francis and Tracy McGrady. You know what I mean? I'm watching the Knicks and I see, Latrell and Houston, but right after that, like when I'm getting into basketball, I'm watching those two guys. I'm not paying attention to anybody else. So when I go back and do my history on Tom Thibodeau, I'm like, we might have something special here. And sure enough, we end up being in the top of the league in defense this season. And I'm like, this might be something special. The draft alone is what made me. Yeah, the draft alone said, I'm all in. I'm all in, and I trust these guys with everything. However, as of late, I'm a little frustrated with, the 8-man and 10-man rotations and the stubbornness that is Tom Thibodeau at times with not playing and, not doing something new. And, I'm ready to see some different things. Like we were talking about a little earlier today, I'm ready for Mitchell Robinson to take a couple jump shots. I'm ready for the pace to get picked up, but I don't see that happening as of yet. But again, I trust you guys. I haven't had trust in the Knicks since Phil Jackson.
Since prior to Phil Jackson.
My trust was there with them because they got my favorite players.
Okay.
So I trusted it. The trust was there for me, but when Phil Jackson came, the trust is gone. So this is the first time since, the 2014-15 season that I'm like, that I can actually say, what, we whatever Jesus take the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm cool with that now. Whatever happens, go ahead and do it.
Go and let God sort it.
Right. So we'll see what happens this season. I have a few trades that I want to be made, or players that I think that aren't allowing us to be as successful as we could on the offensive end. But everything else, again, I'm letting Leon and World Wide West and Tibbs, I'm letting them do their job. Ultimately, if they decide to get rid of everybody, I'm gonna support it. Because I understand that what they're trying to do, the plan that they have, which another thing that I admire about them is that I don't know what they're trying to do. That I feel like that's, real mob bosses move in silence, and the fact that I have absolutely no clue what they're trying to do, it forces me not to be able to speculate on anything. Because when I speculate, I like to have some tangible things to pull from. I have absolutely nothing to pull from except for Mark Berman's, and Ian Begley's takes on things. I have nothing to pull from. This season seems like if there was ever a season to really just live and let die and allow, this is the one. This is the one. So we'll see what comes of it. And I'm starting to say the P word. With everything that's going on in the East right now, with the way these teams are playing in the East right now, there's no reason that we should not be at number 8. I don't want to play the 9 and 10 play-in series, but there's no reason we should not be at number 7 or 8. I don't think so.
Well, HC, I believe 7 for HC are in that tournament. I think it's 7, 8, 9, and 10 to determine who
right
teams are in. And there was a stretch during this, when we was up before this losing streak and the previous losing streak, where I thought there was a good chance we would avoid the playing game altogether and be a 6 seed. I've calmed that down a little bit recently, but it's still not out of the realm of possibility.
Well, I mean, if you look at the standings and all of the injuries that's going on with the Eastern Conference, I don't think it's not far-fetched for us to say that we can make maybe the 6th seed. I don't see it being that far-fetched. I mean, right now we're number 9. We're 8 and 11. Atlanta Hawks are 9 and 8. They're at number 6 right now. Granted, Clint Capella is playing out of his mind, but we already beat Atlanta, right? The only team that we have trouble with, at 7 right now is Cleveland, and we got exposed by Cleveland. Really bad with Andre Drummond alone. The Magic, we beat Magic already,
We
right?
beat Cleveland as well, right? We lost
Yeah,
to
we
them
beat
almost.
Cleveland as well, but we
It's a
lost to
different
them.
team. Yeah.
We lost to them abysmally, if you ask me, and they were shorthanded. You know, when we lost to them, they didn't have their starting backcourt.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
So between 8 right now with Orlando, and the only reason that they're at 8 and we're at 9 is because we played one. We've lost. We played one more game than them, and we've lost one more game than them. You know what I mean? They're 8-10. We're 8-11.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When it comes to Cleveland, they're 8-9. We've played 2 more games than them. We've lost 2 more games than them. You know what I mean? So like, in reality, we're really 7, 8, and 9. If you ask me, for the most part, they're tied.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you keep adding up their records to the end of the year, they're pretty much part tied. So I feel like we can overtake Cleveland. I don't think we play them again for the rest of the season. So I feel like we can overtake Cleveland. And then that leaves us Atlanta to beat at number 6. You know, the top teams, the Sixers, the Celtics, the Bucks, the Pacers, the Nets, those top 5 are going to fluctuate. I would even go so far, right. And I would even go so far as to say the Celtics might drop down with the way that they're playing right now. You know, Jason Tatum's out. Our shouts out to Kemba Walker. That's my guy. He's from my neighborhood. You know, Kemba Walker is, struggling right now for the most part. I could see that Boston team dropping significantly. You know, who would have thought that we'd be above the Raptors right now? The team that just won a championship 2 seasons ago, right? So I don't think it's far-fetched from where we stand right now with being the highest defense in the league. I don't think it's far-fetched to say that we can make the number 6 seed. You know,
I mean, I called that early. I'm shying away from it a little bit, but I think we could be in that conversation for sure. And a 3-game win streak puts us right back.
A 3-game, not for nothing, a 3-game win streak. If we was to get a 3-game win streak right now, and Atlanta, well, if we was to get a 3-game win streak right now against who are we playing in the next few games?
We got coming.
Is that a winnable game?
I mean, that's going to be a tough game. We got back-to-back with the Bulls in Chicago.
So I would judge the Clippers game because we play the Bulls Friday, right?
And we have. Do we have Cleveland again or no?
Let's see.
Or we just played Cleveland.
We played Cleveland a week and a half ago.
So yeah, I think it's the Clippers. I know it's the Clippers, the Bulls twice. I'm not sure if there's another team in there.
So let's look, because I think so. We just played we got Cleveland. We just played the Jazz. We got Cleveland on Friday.
The Clippers,
we got the Clippers on Sunday.
And then
Bulls back to back. So Cleveland's going to be a tough one. And being that we have 2 days off, 1 day off, can we do some damage against that Clippers team? If we can beat this Clippers team, then the next game that I'm really worried about is that Blazers game next week, Saturday.
Oh, that's the revenge game.
That's the revenge game.
I'm talking trash. I hope we beat them though.
Right. So I don't foresee us going on a run, but I think we could go on a run. If we beat this Clippers game, I feel like that'll be more than enough, but it's a back-to-back. We play the Clippers at home, and then we go to we play the Clippers. Yeah, we play the Clippers at home, and then we go to Chicago. We play them back-to-back in Chicago.
Yeah.
Right. We play the Clippers at home, and then it's a back-to-back Clippers Chicago, and then we get a day off on Tuesday, and then we play Chicago again. And and then we come back home for the revenge game. I think if we beat the Clippers on Sunday, we could probably beat the Bulls in 2 more games. And then we have to deal with the revenge game because from that, it's a real revenge game because Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off. Or Wednesday's a game, Thursday, Friday off. Saturday we come back. So we have 2 days off to recuperate. Damn, the Blazers damn near off for a whole week when we played them. A whole week.
Yes, they were.
Right? So, and I don't even think, now that I look at our schedule, we don't have a break like that. We don't have a gap where there's like 4 games off. All of our games are back-to-backs, 1 days off, 2 days off. We don't have a gap unless there's something like that later on in the season.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a gap like that where we can take a real break. We don't.
Yeah, my big wish is we could finish this first half of the season somewhere close to 500. You know, maybe one or 2 games under or 1 or 2 games over. Because I know the second half of the season, the schedule should lighten up, considering we had one of the 2 worst difficult schedules to start the season, or the first half of the season. So it should flip flop on the back end, and hopefully we just hit our stride. By the time the second half of the season begins.
So when's the All-Star break start?
I want to say February 5th, 4th or 5th.
So February.
No, is it? Yeah, I think so.
Nah, February 5th, right around the corner.
Then March 5th.
March 5th. Okay.
Yeah, March 5th, and then the end of that first half is like the 25th.
Well, if that's the case, then after our Heat game, we have a nice little light stretch because we play the Heat on a Sunday, then the Heat again 2 days later on a Tuesday. Then we got the Wizards, the Rockets, the Hawks, the Magic, the Spurs, the Timberwolves, the Warriors, the Kings, the Pacers, the Pistons, the Spurs again. Yeah, so out of those,
like 8 out of 10 of those,
right? We should be able to. I could see us winning. I think the Hawks, the Rockets game will be a tough game. They're still getting their feet on. The Wizards game we should be able to destroy the Wizards. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. The Rockets game might be a tough one. The Hawks game, we already beat them once. We can do it again. The Magic game, we beat them. We can do it again. The Spurs aren't doing too well. The Timberwolves look trash. The Warriors, we beat them once. We can do it again. The Kings, that might be a game that we lose. The Pacers, we beat them once. We can do it again. The Pistons are trash. And the Spurs are trash, right? So we should be able to come out with, from that stretch after the Heat, the only games I see us losing are the Rockets game, the Kings game, and maybe the Pacers game. So I think that we have, starting now, really, right? After we get past this Cleveland, Clippers, and the back-to-back Bulls, we might have a really nice shot after that,
I agree, man. I hope so. Did you want to mention any of those trades you said you have in the back of your mind, or anything else you wanted to discuss?
Yeah. So, I bottom line is Elfrid Payton's got to go. I know you're Alpha Wall Street guy.
That's not me.
That's not you. No, you're not. Okay, you're not the Elf. No, okay.
That's City for real.
That's City for real. That's City for real. Shout out to City for real. Elfrid Payton's got to go. He's an offensive liability. He's stagnant. Do I foresee him going? No. Do I want him to go? He's got to go, in my opinion. The trade rumors. At first, I was against the idea of bringing Derrick Rose in, but once I went back and analyzed like who Derrick Rose really is and who he played with and how he responds, and Derrick Rose is perfect under Tibbs, and even the fact that he's been taken aback and Killian Hayes has been running that Detroit offense up there. for a little bit of time that he was, and Derrick Rose was sitting on the bench, coming off the bench,
Still
producing, and I don't see why he's not the perfect guy to teach Emmanuel quickly. And I would even go so far as to say that he might be the guy, not for nothing, one of my favorite players on this team, although we haven't seen him yet, DSJ. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to, a lot of people compared DSJ to Derrick Rose.
That was one of them.
I don't see, yeah, right? So like, I mean, I saw DSJ a lot in, when I was living in North Carolina. I watched him play, you know what I mean? I've been out to I've seen a lot of Derrick Rose. I mean, I've seen a lot of DSJ from my time of living in North Carolina, or at least I heard the buzz about him and everything from high school. So I didn't necessarily compare him to Derrick Rose, but a lot of people looked at his athletic skill set and compared that to Derrick Rose. I didn't look at his game and say any of his games was like Derrick
only
Rose's.
Athleticism.
Just the athleticism.
That was one of the things that I thought Tibbs was gonna. I was like, Tibbs is gonna do some things for DSJ.
Right. And what I've come to realize is that it's DSJ, and this comes from a lot from me listening to a lot of the No Chill Gil podcast with Gilbert Arenas. I feel like DSJ is a guy that you need to just give him the ball and let him do what he wants to do. He's not a system player. Even if you look at that Dallas season under Rick Carlisle, Rick Carlisle let him do, go ahead. And he was doing in my opinion, some pretty nice stuff for a rookie, averaging 15.5 a game, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds. Like, that's a guy that I could have seen, but it was like a systemless thing, under a system. He's a creative player. Creative players don't have room for system basketball. Mm-hmm. Just like, I hate to do the comparison, but Derrick Rose played under a system, but Derrick Rose was give me the ball and I'll do what I can when I want to. And if I need a bailout, I have the bailout. Here you go, Luol Deng. Here you go, Joakim Noah. You know what I mean? Here you go, Kirk Heinrich if you're on the floor. You know what I mean? So it was just a little bit different with Derrick Rose. And I feel like if Tom Thibodeau would just see that Derrick Rose needs that same type of, not attention, but not attention. You know what I mean? Like, no attention to him at all. Like, let him do what he does. Put him in a game. Let him do stuff. And I feel like if he was to deal with that, like, maybe we can see something out of DSJ. But there's something that they're not telling us about DSJ that's, making a determination as to why he's not on the floor. And that's frustrating for me.
I think the hardest reason, the most difficult thing to do as far as giving him the keys and letting him go is, and comparing him with Derrick Rose, is Rose was a lot better of a decision maker. So it's almost like you didn't have to worry about him making a bad decision. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the one problem that Dennis Smith, like, I agree, you got to let him go for him to succeed. But you also got to live with those turnovers because they're going to come.
Yeah.
So, what I mean? But I agree. I think Rose could do some good for Dennis Smith. It may be a little bit too late. Like, I don't know how much run Smith is going to get at all the rest of the season. And one thing I want to reiterate about Alfred is he does have that no trade clause. So a lot of people are saying, "Oh, we got to get rid of him. We got to get rid of him." He has to be willing to go. Otherwise, prepare for him to be here. But I also think he's the kind of guy that is going to accept whatever role he's given. So if he ends up being third stringer, I think now he's going to be okay with it or happy with it, but he's not going to put up a stink about it, and he's going to accept the role and just stay ready. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Now,
I think that's
I
one thing
feel,
to look forward to.
so something that I wanted to bring up earlier, not earlier, but on on the MBK show, um, the no trade clause in New Orleans with making a move for Lonzo Ball. Do you think, given Elfrid Payton where he's from, it's got to be a perfect storm, right? Like Elfrid Payton's got to want to go there, right? He's got $5 million on his contract. We're moving Elfrid Payton and maybe a second rounder or two for Lonzo Ball. Do you think that Elfrid Payton would want to go to New Orleans? And do you think that New Orleans would accept that trade to give us Lonzo Ball for those second round picks? Because if you look at what New Orleans got, they have all those point guards down there. They
I
have a
think it's
lot of point.
possible. I think it's possible. I think it's possible to talk Peyton into it, being he's from there, his family's there. Excuse me. I think it's possible to talk New Orleans into it as well. I think they're going to be a little bit stubborn though. I don't think they're in a position where they want or they want the world to know we're trying to get rid of Alonzo, and they may not be trying to. So I don't think there's incentive on their part to just take a deal to take a deal. So they may start with wanting a first round pick, and I can see that. I don't know what the consensus is as far as Knicks fans or the organization, if they think Alonzo's worth a first round pick, but I kind of feel like that's what it's gonna take.
Do you think he's worth first round pick?
At this point, honestly, I do, especially if we are convincing Elfrid to accept the trade. I feel like he does the same things as Peyton with less of a hesitation to shoot. I think he's a better facilitator as far as initiating the fast break. Like he doesn't have to run the fast break to start a fast break. He's a good lead pass guy. If you run it, he's gonna see you. He's gonna see you. My only concern with Lonzo, honestly, is him penetrating half court in the half court set. When it comes to like running the fast break, pushing the offense, even his defense is solid. I think he could do wonders. The one thing that Peyton does that I feel like Alonzo does not is get into the paint on a half court setting type thing. But I think every other aspect, I think he's an upgrade. And the only reason I say yes, I would be willing to give up a first. I would veer away from like one of these recent ones coming up. But if it's something down the line, I think I would do it. He's young. He fits the timeline. He could grow with this group. I think he needs the spotlight. When I say the spotlight, I mean like LA, New York City spotlight, not necessarily being the guy, but I think he's fit for the big city, the bright lights.
Okay. So I agree with you. I don't know if I would do a first rounder for him, simply because I need a way to guarantee that he stays.
Well,
right.
At the very least, we'll have him for one more year.
Right. So, but I need someone that's going to
be a consistent.
Right. He wants the extension. I need a guy that is going to stay here for the development of Emmanuel Quickley. What I mean by that is, based off of this series alone, the series of games we have, I don't think Emmanuel Quickley is ready. I've uttered that multiple times. I wanted to see how he came out and how he played. He did good against Portland. He did decently against Golden State. But the
I mean,
Sacramento game and this last game were abysmal games.
this last game he was taking the same shots though. They just weren't falling. That's gonna happen sometimes. So I wasn't too concerned with him last game.
Right, but what I'm saying is for a guy to be given the keys, those things can't happen. Like those shots.
I agree.
You see what I'm saying? So if we do end up getting rid of Elfrid Payton, right? Because Elfrid Payton's $5 million this year, and then we don't know what could happen. Right? So if we do end up getting rid of Elfrid Payton, then I need to know that Lonzo Ball is gonna be here. So that until we work out all of the kinks for Emmanuel quickly, right? That I need that reassurance. I want quickly, but I need that.
I don't think it's a question though, because like again, the problem, he wanted the extension from New Orleans. They didn't give it to him. If wherever he goes, I think he's primed to sign the extension. I think because that's what he wants.
Right. Well,
so I don't think we got to worry about that at all.
Okay. Well, in that case,
I really don't.
So in that case, the next question is, what do you think is better for us, Lonzo Ball or Derrick Rose?
I think Derrick Rose is more likely, considering the relationship. I think Ball fits the timeline better.
Agreed.
And like my top guy I'm with Sim. My top guy,
Kyle Lowry.
It's Kyle Lowry, but I'm willing to trade for him now. Honestly, I'm willing to trade for him. Get him, lock him up. Don't compete with free agency next year. Don't even give him an opportunity to weigh his options. You know what I mean? So if he would agree to a trade and extension, and we work out, obviously not 30 million, but we work out a fair deal, I would do that now.
So does he have a player option? Does Kyle Lowry have a player option?
No, his player option was for this season, I believe. I think he opted in this year.
So when you say agree to a trade, you're just hoping that Toronto is going to honor that trade. Is that what you're saying?
No, we could if we trade for him, we could extend him before the offseason. And if you trade for somebody,
I see what you're saying.
If you trade for somebody, you could talk to that player and make sure he's agreeing to an extension before the trade. So it's no risk. You know what I mean?
Copy.
Especially when you have bird rights and he's still under bird rights. So again, I wouldn't trade for him with the risk of him still becoming a free agent. But if he's willing to sign a 2-year extension or a 1-and-1 extension, as soon as we make the trade, I'll do that.
Okay.
And the reason I like him so much is, number one, the championship experience. One, when's the last time we've even had that on our team? Somebody who knows how to win and then win it all. Not saying he was the reason for it, but he was a part of it.
Right.
And prior to that, all he did was win and then run into LeBron.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sold on Kyle Lowry. I never liked your shorter guards. You're shorter. I don't want to say undersized because he's like a fullback. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But I've always liked your guards that are between like 6'4", 6'5". Like those have always been my premier guards, even though my favorites, are shorter. But they jumped out the gym. They were freakish athletes. I'm not sold on Kyle Lowry, and I feel like the money that we would sew up Kyle Lowry at, we can make on absorbing a superstar contract. making him trade and absorbing a superstar contract. You know what I mean? And like just like what they were talking about.
What do you think he commands next? What do you think he commands next year? Because
Kyle Lowry?
I think his max next year is 10, and I think we could get him cheaper than that.
You think we could get Kyle Lowry, who was in the All-Star game last season, who won a championship?
He's made his money. He's not getting a 20-year, a 2-year, $40 million contract from anybody. He's not getting 20 a year. I don't think he's getting 15 a year in the open market.
I think he get 15 a year in the open market.
For how many years? He could probably get a 1-year 15. He's not.
How old is he? How old is he?
He's 30. He's mid to early 30s. But he has wear and tear. Like, granted, he's not necessarily injury prone. I just feel like he's the type of guy that, especially being that he won his chip, he's not gonna ring chase. At the very least, I can see him going to Philly because that's where he's from. Maybe if Miami made some changes, I could see him going there. But as far as like Lakers, Clippers, and I don't think he goes for the mid-level or vet minimum to chase a ring. I think the mark.
Okay, so Kyle Lowry,
30 million.
Kyle Lowry is 34 years old. Yeah, he's 34 years old. Yeah.
I think we could get him.
Okay, you're convincing me. You're convincing me. I mean, but dude, this is 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, and 19 All-Star.
Agreed. I think we can get him for the max. I think we can do a 1-year 15. I think he jumps on that because I don't think he gets more than 1 year 15 anywhere. I think he'll jump on a 2-year 25. I think he'll jump on a 3-year 35 with a team option after the second. I think security, long-term security, and a decent bag. I think he jumps on that.
So the question is, 3 years, $35 million. Do you want a 30? Because it looks like he's 30. When was his birthday? It looks like
third year team option. So essentially, it's a 2-year.
Dude, he's turning 35 this year.
I know.
So you want a 37-year-old? I'm looking at that 2 years. That last year, you want a 37-year-old point guard?
Listen, you gotta remember, I was one of the guys. I was the first guy on the Chris Paul train before he got traded to OKC. I wanted us to go for Chris Paul. The chat killed me for that very same reason. Age. You want a 30 whatever year old point guard making that money. So the money is way less. The experience is the same. We're dealing with a champion, which Chris Paul is not. You know what I mean? Like, and if you want to even take it further, because I'm a big Chris Paul fan, but he's more of a proven win. If you take the championship away from him, he's still more of a proven leader or a proven winner than Chris Paul.
Wow, that's a bold take. I mean,
I'm going off record. I'm going off.
Right. I get what you're saying. I'm just saying.
And he's a dog.
What you're implicating is that Kyle Lowry is better than Chris Paul. That's I'm not saying that. I feel like that's the implication, because I get that you were saying that about Chris Paul.
He won with less.
But Kyle Lowry is not Chris Paul.
He won more with less.
Toronto? What do you mean?
Take the championship team away. He won more with less than Chris Paul.
Yeah,
Historically, throughout
but
his career.
if you the problem with that argument is the conference, and there's no establishing that. Like, there's no changing that. That's the problem. When you make that comparison of he won more with less, yeah, he also the East was also a lot less than the West.
Yeah,
Like,
but who knocked those teams out every single year?
yeah,
So
that's what I'm saying.
it's one guy that's eliminated every team he's played for, during that stretch, whether it was Cleveland or Miami, but it was always LeBron's team.
Right, but that's what I'm saying. They Toronto kept making it in the East, which was it was competitive. It was a lesser competition in the East. You're dealing with a battered Boston team, right? With the Isaiah Thomas era, right? You're dealing with a battered Indiana team, right? You're dealing with Brooklyn that barely made it. You're dealing with Philadelphia that was a wrecking ball of coaching with 2 All-Stars, right? Like, but then you go over to the West and you look at everything that Chris Paul has had to face in the Western Conference. The competition in which he had was a lot. That's why I'm saying, like,
let me ask you this. Would you agree that Chris Paul has underachieved throughout his career?
No.
Would you agree?
I can't say that.
So you don't think his Clipper teams should have beat any of those teams they lost to throughout his time in the playoffs? You think he always lost to the better team?
Maybe.
And we're talking about the team. Him, Blake, DeAndre, anybody else who was in the mix of those teams. That team shouldn't have advanced any of those years?
Maybe the only year, maybe the OKC series. But yeah, man, nah, that's
hey,
man, I can't.
Give me the overachiever.
I look at it like this. Let's do this. This is how I make my comparison. You put Kyle Lowry on any of Chris Paul teams and Chris Paul on any of Kyle Lowry's team. Right? I know Kyle Lowry's only played for 2, Houston and Toronto. But if you take their years, the years in which Toronto was making the playoffs, which let's do that. So Toronto made the playoffs essentially from 2013 on, right? If you take them both and swap them from 2013 and on,
I think the expectation for the team that has Chris Paul is higher.
Do they
100%.
Does that Toronto team beat LeBron?
The reason I can't say yes is because historically Chris Paul hasn't gotten over the hump, whomever the hump was, whatever the reason be. And granted,
fair enough.
I was the guy that wanted Chris Paul when everybody killed me. I was crazy. Like, I never let that live down because, like, I got quiet on the chat because everybody, like, they was yelling. I'm just like, all right, I was just suggesting it.
Right. Yeah, I remember that.
And then a year later, it's like, oh, everybody, Chris Paul.
I was against it. I was still against the Chris Paul thing, by the way. So I think I was the only one that would stay consistent with that. I was still against it. I was ecstatic that it didn't happen.
But I think he can do, and not saying he's better, but I think he can do similar things that a Chris Paul could have done for this organization at a way cheaper price. I think we'll still have cap space to bring somebody else with him. I think, bringing Chris Paul in, man, this is our team, and it's only about the development of our young guys. Like it wasn't about luring another free agent because that cap hold wasn't
Was
going to
chopped
allow
up.
us to bring anybody else in. So it was
Right.
literally about what he could do for our young guys. Maybe get us an AFC. Maybe teach us how to get to the playoffs, win in the playoffs. I think Lowry can do the same exact things at a cheaper price, where we'll still have the money to bring in another guy.
Okay. I like that. I like that take. I could second that notion. I'm still fearful. I don't know, maybe it's just my basketball bias, but I'm still against the smaller guard. Excuse me. I'm still against the smaller guard. But for the sake of teaching the smaller guard that we have in the burning bright star of Emmanuel Quickly, I could see that happening. I would much rather have it be Derrick Rose. You know, I don't see Derrick Rose as the reclamation project that he once was when we first got him, which I think I'll add to one of my.
He did great, in my opinion.
Yeah, he definitely did great. Even before the injury, he was doing great, but I was fearful of that. But yeah, he did do great. Surprisingly, what I was fearful of happened again. But by the way, I'll add that to my list of bruises, was the signing of Derrick Rose and the injury and blah blah. But
Joakim Noah.
He seems Joakim Noah, yeah. Right now, Derrick Rose, since that Minnesota 48-point game or whatever it was, he seems to be very solid and consistent. Even that team after Thibodeau and the two teams, 2 years at Detroit, like I was against it initially, and once Sim pointed out, well, he did play with Tom Thibodeau. He did get Rookie of the Year with Tom Thibodeau. He did go to the Eastern Conference Finals with Tom Thibodeau. He did play with Tom Thibodeau in Minnesota. I was like, oh wow, he's almost a shoe-in guaranteed for re-signing.
It makes the most sense.
It makes the most sense, and I'm more for that.
And he fits in that frame of still having cap space.
And I would go so far as to say I actually want him and Lonzo. I want Derrick Rose and Lonzo Ball. But me wanting Lonzo Ball would automatically imply that Tom Thibodeau makes a coaching change and says, all right, we're going to do fast breaks now. But I feel like with Derrick Rose alone, we'll be able to push the tempo with Derrick Rose. Not necessarily as much as Lonzo Ball, but the fact that Derrick Rose is going to push the ball with the ball in his hand is intriguing to me. Just as long as the ball gets pushed, because this whole EP walking the ball up really slow, no fat bottom of the barrel and fast break points, like we have players that should be downhill runners. Julius Randle, not for nothing. If you look at him previous to this season, he's a downhill guy. Kevin Knox, he's got some pretty exciting plays that he's got going downhill. Obi Toppin, downhill. RJ Barrett, a bit of both, half court and downhill, but more exciting downhill.
Your guy, right? DSJ.
My guy, DSJ, granted, he's not going to touch the floor if Derrick Rose is on this team. They're not going to touch the floor together at least, but DSJ, downhill. The only other guys that aren't really downhill players are your Alec Burke, Austin Rivers, Frank Ntilikina. Hell, even Mitchell Robinson, who's got sticky fingers with lobs, can be a downhill guy. Actually, Taj Gibson is not a downhill player. So we'll see. But I wouldn't mind having them both.
I honestly, I think Rose is the most likely option, but my preference is Larry. I really just think his shooting, his defense. He's not a bad assist guy. He's an excellent rebounder. And then again, that championship experience is priceless. It's things that he can tell you that 90% of guards in the league can't tell you because they haven't been there.
Right.
You know, and that right there is priceless. That's one of the reasons I was high on Van Fleet, because again, he had that championship experience and he was a contributor. He wasn't the go-to guy.
He wasn't the go-to guy, yeah.
But he contributed. Like you can argue they don't win it without him. He got them some games.
Yeah, and I was, I was way like I saw what you guys understood with the value of Van Vliet, but I was like, no. Again, this is my undersized guard biased, right? Even when we drafted Emmanuel quickly, I knew when we made those moves that we made for that 23rd pick, I knew that the intention was for us to get Tyrese Maxey, who's also a bit of an undersized guard. And I was like, man, I'm not getting the guy that I absolutely wanted, which is Devin Vassell. I got a substitute, which I was excited about, in Obi Toppin. And all of the guards that I would have wanted later on down the line were taken midway through the draft. So when we got Manuel quickly, I was just like, whatever. You know what I mean? I didn't get Tyrese Maxey, who was, for whatever reason, the better player, but whatever. But those games that he played made me a believer. Definitely made me a believer. So, I have high stock in Emmanuel quickly. And I value the youth. I value this team. I'm not really one to say I'm willing to, I'm happy with where the team is at right now. And if we didn't make any trades or any acquisitions this year, and we still fought and clawed through to make our way to the playoffs, I'm happy with exactly where we're at. Even if we don't make the playoffs and we have a obviously better record than what we had last season, I'm happy with the acquisitions and what we did and how we did it and how we got there. And I have nothing to complain about right now. Absolutely nothing to complain about. I can gripe about some things.
Nitpick.
Yeah, I can nitpick.
Maybe that would be a segment.
Nitpick. Hey, you can't really be mad, but you can nitpick about stuff. And we all, we're like the angry monkey that's pointing the finger at stuff. We're not really effective at nothing, just pointing out some stuff. Hey, I see something going wrong. I'm cool with nitpicking. But I'm not going to use that to try to galvanize the rest of the world to go on a campaign to say, fire Dolan or make Tom Thibodeau go 12 deep or send Austin Rivers to the bench for, going over in the second half. Like, I'm not going to do that. You know what I mean? Because I understand that the development of the team together. And I was always preaching at, like, develop with the youth and keep the core together and show some level of consistency. And we're doing that. So, it's almost like when your wife washes the dishes, she washes them really good and really crystal clean. But when you wash the dishes, there's like a little smudge on the bottom of it. It's on the outside of the glass. You can still drink. But the fact that you didn't do it the way she wanted you to do it is the problem. I'm cool with pointing out those little things, that's small issues with the team. But dude, we got 8 wins right now. We didn't get 8 wins last season until after the All-Star break.
Yeah, it was a time I didn't know if we would get 8 wins last season.
All right. So, those games felt like championships to us when we won them. And they were very short-lived because we were still complaining about stuff too. So overall, this team I'm very excited for them. And so that I can nitpick, I'm waiting for Obi Toppin to show me something. And based off of what we spoke about yesterday, unless we start running fast breaks, unless we start running pick and rolls, I don't see that happening. I don't see Obi Toppin's player attributes that he was signed here for. I don't see anything happen. We didn't sign him to be a stretch four.
Yeah,
we
and it seems like that's his role right now.
Yeah, we didn't sign him for that. Although he can shoot, we didn't sign him to do that. We signed him for what he's good at, which is rolling to the basket, being the last man, the last recipient of the ball on a fast break. We signed him for those, and just the play style that Tom Thibodeau is coaching with isn't conducive to his attributes. So it's just it's patience. We got 3 more years with the kid, and I'm hoping that we get to see him fall into a shell of his own in the next couple games, and hopefully he gets more playing time.
I think he's a breakout game away from having a consistent role and some consistent production.
Right. We'll see. It's right around the corner, and I keep looking at our schedule, and I'm saying, like, man, when is that game going to be? And I was hoping that it was going to be that Portland game. I felt like the Portland game was the perfect opportunity for us to really see what Obi Toppin's got on an NBA level. His only defensive, the only defensive guy that I saw that, I don't even call him defensive, but just the only guy that I saw that was going to be giving Obi Toppin problems was going to be Carmelo coming off the bench at the 4. Mm-hmm. But clearly that wasn't. Like, Obi Toppin was getting bottled up by smaller dudes, so maybe if, we play the Chicago game, Lauri Markkanen, that might be something that he might be able to exploit. Hell, even the no, not so much the Clippers. Well, yeah, even the Clippers game. The Clippers game might be a game that we can say something, unless they play Marcus Morris 1,000 minutes, right? Who's coming off the bench for Marcus Morris at the 4?
I forgot about Morris too.
You see what I mean? Like, Marcus Morris is the starter at the 4 over there because it's Kawhi, George. George's at the 2, Kawhi's at the 3, Morris is at the 4, right? Who's the bench for the Clippers?
I don't know. Their bench is kind of thin anyway.
So maybe that Clippers game might be something that we can.
Yeah, hopefully Kawhi sits out. I know he should be about time due for some load management.
Yeah, I want to say Marcus Morris and that one Kabengele.
Oh, I know his face. I don't know how to say his name, but I know you're talking about.
Melondu Kabengele. Who's that guy? I've never heard of him, but he's 6'9", power forward.
Yeah, he's raw.
State.
He's raw.
And then rookie Daniel Toro and Jay Scrubb. Never heard of that. Well, Jay Scrubb's a shooting guard, but Patrick Patterson coming off the bench for him. It's a lot of maybe it's this game. Are they playing They're playing Zubac at the 5, and they have Serge Ibaka at the 5. Is Zubac coming off the bench for Serge Ibaka, or is Zubac's playing the 4?
I'm not sure.
Zubac is 7 foot.
I think Zubac is starting. I know like they first couple games, what's the other guy? Serge played well, and then he went on a stretch where he wasn't playing well. But the Clippers are still winning, so a lot of times I'll hear these little headlines and these little things, but I look at the record and I'm like, all right, well, it looks like they're playing well enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or it's not affecting the team if one guy is not playing too well. But I think we're in good shape, man.
I think
you officially have the record.
Of what? Longest stream?
We had an hour 40 minutes. There. But yeah, that is definitely a Knicks and Bruises record. I'm gonna have to cut it short because my daughter's on her way out of here. So any last words in closing? If you want to put your Twitter in case you need somebody to follow you? Or
Yeah, so y'all can all follow me on Instagram at both Instagram and Twitter at evergreen_G6. Again, that's evergreen_G6 on Twitter and Instagram. And if any of you guys are on Facebook, the Facebook Knicks group, I'm always on there smashing people in debates and going in on everybody there. So you can tune in both there. My Instagram is primarily for the music. You guys know I do music production. So if you're listening to any of my music or you're looking to tune into what I'm doing as far as production and engineering, you can follow me there. And Twitter, I'm not really heavy on Twitter, but I do jump on and dabble around in Knicks content there too. So y'all can check me out there.
Salute. EverGreen, man, I appreciate you.
Peace and love, King.
The more I get this thing going and the more different ideas I got coming up, you're more than welcome to come back always.
Absolutely.
But again, I appreciate you, man. Thanks for giving me some time.
Thank you, man. It was a pleasure. I'll be sure to come back on here and chop it up with you sometime. It's a good conversation.
No doubt.
Without all the arguing that they do on an MBK show. You know what I mean?
You know,
this is good talk.
I like because it's one-on-one, and
right.
It's really for you to express your thoughts and you know your Knicks and your Bruises, and then I'll just throw a little insight here and there. But it's really about the individual fan and giving everybody a platform to speak their words.
Definitely. Thank you for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
No doubt. You still doing articles on the MBK site?
I haven't done an article in a while just because I haven't found anything worthy enough for the article. By the time I get to write it, something not nothing worthy enough, but by the time I get to write it, something crazy happens, and it's like, well, that previous article would have been irrelevant. And so I feel like I'm gonna have another really big article. I'm definitely gonna have a big article coming out on the All-Star break.
Okay.
I know that for a fact because it's going to give a lot of the fans time to regurgitate and really dwell on everything that happened over that time frame. It's just, you know, we can talk about a 3-game winning streak. You know, I like for my articles to have a story base to them, you know, and something that you can really dwell on and learn from, as opposed to just a few stats being brought up here and there that you could have really just read up and searched for yourself. You know what I mean? I want there to be like a real story and content, you know, and I just haven't had anything that happened to me that was memorable enough or worthy enough for there to be a creative written story about it related to Knicks. So, but I think but like I said, by the time the All-Star break comes up, you know, I have a few ideas of what could potentially happen and as far as what I can write about. And I think that'll be real substantial later on down the line with, you know, there's a few days to really sit down and read it. So
yeah, I hear you.
But I'm here. I'm here. I see what you're doing over there too. And I mean, I'm paying attention to it. So I see what you're doing over there.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. And again, thanks again for joining. I definitely appreciate it. Shout out to the chat. Your Black is time. Peace.